Welcome to Dominate Your Day, Christian. It's so nice to meet you. And I think you've got a pretty impactful what I see story. My goal here at Dominate Your Day as we work with difference makers who want to make an impact in the corporate world is to find the story behind the story.
Yes.
So, Christian, tell the audience about yourself and what you are doing right now in this world and that you've been made to do.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Dana, for having me on your podcast, Dominate Your Day. I'm extremely excited to be here and just talk a little bit about the work that I've done and my work history and how I also want to contribute to making the social impact in all types of ways in different sectors. So for the audience, hello, I'm Christian Nunes, and a little bit about me is I'm a licensed clinical social worker, former trauma therapist, policy strategist, a keynote speaker, and I am considered an expert in gender equity and mental health equity as well. One of the most important things I love to talk about is that I'm the most recent former president, national president of the National Organization for Women for the past 5 years. And I made history as being the first Black woman to lead the organization in over 50 years. My journey in general of where I've come to is really great and interesting, but it all flows and it's a great trajectory, I think personally. Starting out as a social worker and a trauma adolescent therapist, it really am seeing what happened and it disconnects what happens between policy and actual practice. It really just fueled my commitment to intersectional leadership and systematic change across all specters: mental health, gender, race, everything. So after seeing all these things, being involved in legislative advocacy and policy, helping create policy, helping to advocate for those with voices that often aren't seen, I'm now moving into leading again in my practice of equity-bound solutions where we help organizations, nonprofits, community orgs really implement proactive, mission-driven, and equity-driven solutions that prioritize workplace wellness, inclusive leadership, and really look at the long haul, cultural transformation that's needed in organizations to be successful and do great work and have a great brand reputation where people want to come to them.
So you're kind of using your authentic self as you've been growing in your career. But what I'm curious about is how did you get into social work? What drew you there?
Sure. So, I would honestly say it was from my own experience growing up as a child. I was raised by a single mother. I'd say around age 10. My mother was a nurse, and I have two brothers. And I think when I think about different things that happened in our lives, it gave me a need to say, like, wow, other kids go through these things, and, like, wouldn't it be great if they had someone that looked like them that they could connect with, that would understand part of their journey, and then part of the part of the journey is culturally that affects them as well, the intersectionality of their journey. Way before intersectionality was a word, I would say, but just being able to be there and be able to identify those things and create a safe space for other children and adolescents to talk about things without judgment. So that's kind of what led me into really like becoming a therapist. Before that, I actually worked as a domestic violence and victim witness advocate, and I think that part fueled my need for change, systematic change. So using those two things, but the story really started in my own life.
It's so interesting. I know we have another group here in Dallas called Know Me Network, and they work with women that have been sex trafficked. And they're saying that so many of them have come
Yes.
from foster homes,
Mm-hmm.
and that just that whole abuse you're talking about, and the transforming of their lives and transforming after something like that. So the work you've been doing for I don't know how long is it? Because you got your degree, your master's in
Yeah,
social
so
work.
I've been a licensed clinical social worker, independent level, for 20 years. But I graduated from a master's program in 2002. So what is that, 23 years?
Yeah.
And so, but I go back to working as a social worker since 2000. So it's been 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Total.
That's great. And then you have another master's, right, in business? Is it your business?
Yes. So one of the things I thought was interesting as I was like navigating the workplace and I went into business for myself was that I didn't feel like, my degree in social work really focused on the business aspect of like how to do administration, how to lead these nonprofits, how to do that part. I really just kind of set us in place. And so I wanted to make sure I was balanced. So I
Mhm.
think 10 years after I got my first master's, I went back and did the very first online education program they had, which was University of Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
And I got my master's in business administration while I was working and teaching as an adjunct professor for the University of Phoenix campus. So yeah, and it's been very, very helpful. I think they should have really more like dual degree programs with our
Mhm.
MBA and master's in science or master's in social work. I think it's so extremely important, and it really help me guide my nonprofit leadership and my executive leadership.
Well, and it's so interesting, Christian, because I think I was talking to a leader just this morning, and you probably see this now as working with corporate. And she was saying, yeah, I just feel like I'm in a whole new career now, but I'm not as busy as I was. And I said, well, that's the new thing, right? Going and getting your degree right now, doing other things while you're learning and continuing to grow. And I think there's been a mindset of, oh, I've got my degree, I'm good. And then all of a sudden it's like the world is changing and you need more and opportunities to develop yourself. So that self
Mhm.
development was what I see with you. You sound like a constant learner. Are
You know
you
what?
always learning?
I identify as a very proud nerd. And I reclaim the word nerd. I know a lot of people
Mhm.
don't like that term, but I don't see anything wrong with it. It is a person who, is really into education, and it's it's a trope, but I reclaim nerd. And I'm a very proud nerd. I love to research. I love to read. I love to learn. And I'm always learning about new things. My latest discovery has been AI, and I've been doing a lot of work also with tech world about talking about the importance of AI and digital safety and tech facilitated gender-based violence. So I always find ways that everything intersects, and I always love to
Mhm.
figure out how do you intersect, how do we create better solutions, how do we find ways that better serve the world? Because I'm very
Mhm.
driven of that, of a lot of things that I do. So yeah, I love to learn.
So, so now you're taking this kind of experience that you've had this past 25 years and really working with leaders on change management
Hmm.
and developing their people in a changing culture. So,
Absolutely.
how are you adjusting yourself and guiding these leaders during this change in our culture? How are you managing that?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Dina. I think it's such an important question because right now I feel that there's a lot of fear to talk about things such as diversity, equity, inclusion, to even use those words. We know there's a huge push going on that, companies that receive federal funding cannot, organizations cannot use these words that are deemed anti-woke,
Mhm.
or work woke words, I should say, and that DEI has kind of been manipulated and twisted to make it seem like it's giving preferential treatment to other people. But what I like to do now in this time is really have conversations with people to break down and educate them really what it means when you're talking about equity, really what it means what about inclusion, and how that really looks on like an everyday practical level. It is nothing if it's nothing different, it's nothing extra unless you've never done it, right? So, but if you're a company that's invested in making sure everyone has a voice, making sure that your employees and your stakeholders feel seen and heard, making sure that people feel safe in their workplaces, then you're actually executing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is about fairness. That is about treating everyone the same. That is about making sure that everyone has the resources they need to be successful. Everyone. So a big part of the work I have to do lately, it's just really communicating these things in a way that doesn't create that fear of what if I get tagged or what if there's bad heat that comes to my company. Let's talk about how you can still implement these things and be proactive and solution and equity driven without having to even use the word equity. Let's break this down, what this really looks like. So for me, it's helping companies understand how you break this down in very practical, successful ways And for those who are bold and are not and not worried, we could talk about it. Actually, saying what it is. But for me,
Mhm.
it's equity work, right? From straight out, it's
Mhm.
equity work.
Mhm. And so when I think about it, I think when I was in corporate before I started my own consulting company, and when we started that, Dee and I probably 10, 15 years ago, they said, we know we've been successful when we don't have to have a department anymore, that everybody's doing
Mm,
this. And I think it's like, how do we transfer that terminology to everywhere, is what I'm hearing you say, without that everybody's thinking that, without having to put it in a little code or something. Does that make sense?
yeah, but I would say I also like to talk to people about being cautious, not to feel that once you do it once, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where companies and organizations find risk reoccurs or find like themselves backsliding, because a big part of this is really prioritizing and committing it to it through your cultural transformation, through your organizational culture. Like, you're committing to these concepts, you're committing to these important things, and you're not afraid to continue the commitment. It's just like if we're trying to train a leader, and as we're mentioning about continuing education, you have to continue your education. The world is changing. There's new information coming. There's differences happening. And in order for you to continue to be successful, you have to continue to educate yourself. Make sure you're putting yourself around people who are going to help you. Make sure you're getting the education that you need, the resources. And the same thing goes to organizations, right? If you want to make sure you're a company that has this amazing brand reputation, that's getting the best return of investment, that is a place that's welcoming, that has a healthy organizational culture, this is a long haul thing. This is
Mhm.
not a just one and done. So a big part of what I try to do too is just tell people like how this has to continue. It can't be like a one scope project that you do for 2 months and then you feel like it's solved all the problems. It won't.
And it's really a mindset of
Hmm.
culture, right? I feel
Absolutely.
like it's, if you have a culture of inclusion anyway, and you're creating that, everybody has a voice, everybody brings meaning and value, then but it's how many companies don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. And
Absolutely.
it's just human to human. You mentioned the whole thing with AI and what that's doing right now. So I'm intrigued about that. What are you doing with AI that you're working on right now?
Sure. So, AI is I tell people that there's AI innovation is so fascinating. Right now, AI is soon to pass, human intelligence, right? It's moving and rapidly growing so fast. But what we have to think about is the developers of AI are human beings. They
Yeah.
are people who have their own internal and thoughts and values. They have implicit bias that we all have, that we have to work on and constantly check.
Hmm.
And they have their own lived experiences, what could be very monolithic or they could be very intersectional and diverse. These are the creators of AI.
Hmm.
So what happens in that process is that their viewpoints, their values, how they see the world is built into the system.
Hmm.
And what has happened on the negative side of AI is that because of that, you see a lot of bias. There's an algorithmic bias that exists in AI where it targets marginalized communities. It targets gender, which is really women. It targets racial communities. It
Hmm.
targets LGBTQIA communities. It targets poverty communities of like poverty, and these marginalized communities are being targeted. And so, but it's based off of how people perceive these communities, right? Because once again, we're human who created this, so there
Hmm.
becomes this algorithmic bias, how they see you, how they view you. Built into AI and filter bubbles as well, who they didn't take people of color in consideration when they made certain apps. They didn't take women in consideration when they made certain apps. Very similar to what we see in research, right? And
Hmm.
so then what happens is the system itself then creates harm by passing information as factual when it has a bias lens. And was it intentional? I don't believe so. But when you never involve people at the table, women, people of color, people with disabilities, LGBTQIA communities, if you never involve these people in the process of development and for advisory, then you wind up either creating bias or you wind up creating harm by just leaving them out of the solution that's happening. So we've seen this in AI. What I do is I actually go to different conferences and do advisory to different groups on to address these things, such as deep fakes, to address gender-based violence, online gender-based violence, and internet-based sexual abuse, to address how we're seeing the racial violence that occurs online because of these things, and how developers and tech and platforms can work to fix this to create safety versus more harm. So that's a lot of what I talk about, a lot of things that I do and just do advisory on, which is really fast. And I love AI. I use it every day,
Yeah,
right? But,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, I love AI. So I would say
Mhm.
it's a great thing, but we have to make sure we're always doing our checks and balances and our quality assurance and a review to make sure it's doing no harm.
That is so interesting. And I love that you're taking your learning strength. I feel that you've got some learning strengths in there when you talk about that and
Yes.
really using it for good to help
Hmm.
think, oh my gosh, she's got a great new innovation coming out. Let's think about this and let's think
Yes.
about how we can help make sure it's representing all humans. So
Absolutely.
I think that's great. So Christian, you also are an author of some children's books. So tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Yes. Thank you, Dina. I, like I said, my background, I started as a therapist working with children and adolescents and families, and then I actually then worked at a school doing bullying prevention work and violence prevention work, and working with doing, you know, counseling with a K through 8 school, and then a K through 12 school, and just my experiences of what I've seen come up in those roles I did, even in my practice, was that sometimes it's very hard for people to explain simple, concepts that empower children and adolescents to feel autonomy, to feel empowered in making decisions. And one of the other things too is I always thought it's really early, just important to start very, very early on. You teach these in your kids when they're 3 and 4 and 5, and then they grow up with this sense of confidence. So my children's book are really centered around that, social emotional learning that's so important to growth, but also life issues, like let's address this, but let's address it in a way that will be creative and powerful for kids. So
Hmm.
in April, I released the first one. I have two others coming out this year. The first one's called No Hug Today. And No Hug Today really follows the journey of a young girl named Olivia, about, let's say, age 5, as she decides and feels empowered for the day that she's going to make decisions on who she decides to give hugs to throughout her day based on her level of comfort. And in the book, basically, she goes through these different, experiences, meet different encounters, different people. Some she knows, some she doesn't know, and she's able to either, decide if she wants to give a hug, and if she doesn't, and when she doesn't, she explains why she doesn't want to give a hug. And so it's just a really fun book that I wrote. And I think about even with my own son, I always let him tell me, he's 6 now, he just turned 6. But
Oh,
it was
fun.
always a thing where we did. I said, can mama have a hug? And then he could choose if he wants to give mama a hug or not. I never make him feel that he has to give me a hug. I want him to know that he has a choice if he wants to give a hug. And and so it's a great thing. And I know when some of the reviews I've gotten back from my book, or people said things like, I wish I had this book when I was a kid.
Mm.
It's so important for adults to understand that they have a choice.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm super excited about it, and I'm excited about the next few that are coming out that are going to focus on different parts of this important life lessons I need to do, but in a fun, creative, bright way.
I love how you're thinking about children and having them be empowered,
Hmm.
um, and not people pleasing. I think there's a people pleasing thing that has gone generational, and I
Yes.
see it in the workplace. I hear about it, and that's what that is, right? Is I'll just do whatever they say to do, and then you get into the workplace and it carries over in
And
different.
it's a good point you bring up, Dana, because it does carry over, but it also creates this anxiety, right? And it
Yeah.
creates anxiety in people and employees to speak up
Hmm.
for themselves, and that trickles down in other areas. So if we
Hmm.
don't address it earlier, it creates other things like anxiety and fear that don't even have to be there.
And what reminds me of, we did a talk this week on boundaries, just
Oh, yes.
setting boundaries, right? And that's what really is, you're teaching the kids how to make a
Absolutely.
healthy boundary when they're not feeling safe, and
Absolutely.
being able to do that. So that's amazing. So what's next for you, Christian, and can I share your full name with the audience? Because I
Yes, yes, of course.
Christian Faith Nunes.
Yes.
I love that. I
My
love that.
parents named me well.
They did. Yes. I
Yes.
love that. I love that. So, Christian, when you look at the future and, all that you're learning and training and adapting in our workplace, what do you see as an opportunity for leaders right now as you are out there in the workplace, in speaking at all these conferences and helping all the corporate leaders? What are you seeing that you're equipping or teaching the leaders to think about right now as they're navigating all of this?
Sure. So I would say like the top three things that I see that are important, I think are opportunities for leaders and organizations and companies is to one, to really invest into intersectional inclusive leadership, right? And that is the intersectional lens of how we look at leaders, how we build our perspectives on different leaders, and how we can help build trust and foster this resilient change that needs to take place in leaders for them to be effective leading your teams, leading your companies, and creating this wonderful organizational culture that is thriving, that's powerful, that's successful, performs well. And then the other part of that is also being proactive. We're really focused, my company really focused on proactive solutions. There's no need to wait. A lot of times in this world, we are reactionary. We wait something happens, and then we have to then have a PR plan and a comms plan and this, all these different things. But we kind of look at it like contingency plans. Like look at it proactively. Like how do you build systems into place in your companies that are going to, uncover potential litigation issues, costly crisis, reputational damage, disparities that may happen because of, once again, we all have being human and imperfect.
Mhm.
So being proactive to your solutions to reduce risk. We do that with equity audits. We do that on a mental health, workplace wellness equity audit, and we also do that on a basic equity audit that reviews all your policies, procedures, bylaws, etc. And then the third thing I would just really say is this goes back to my mental health equity background, and is that the importance of how companies, especially in today, what we're seeing happen every single day, and people are feeling just overwhelmed, emotional stress, helpless, is how do you build in workplace wellness and psychological safety into your companies and organizations that will benefit you and benefit your employees, right? You help build in these parts of systems, and you're providing well-being, and it will also help reduce burnout. It will help reduce absenteeism. It will help increase your profits. There is a study McKinsey did that says that companies that really built into like workplace wellness, psychological safety, and inclusive cultures saw 36% more profitable return. So I think those are the areas that we really want to focus on, is like understanding when you're looking at the wellness of your employee, you're looking at letting them be heard and seen and well, you're looking at being proactive, how you're committing to these things, you're creating a system that is just going to be exceptional, and you're creating a system that a job, a place anybody would want to work at, right?
Mhm.
And that just positions you for great success long haul. And so I'm just looking forward to providing those services, whether it's creating the training for you, the audits, strategic planning, whatever. I'm looking forward to do more of that.
That is I'm seeing that as the biggest thing right now is the well-being at work.
Yes.
And I know from Gallup, we've learned that, 7 out of 10 people right now aren't thriving at work.
Yeah.
And one of those 5 areas of well-being, which is, their purpose, their social, their physical, their
Mhm.
financial and community. So what have you seen out there with companies? Who's doing it right now? Are you seeing any great role models yet? I think leaders are kind of perplexed of how do I know when somebody's not thriving? How do I know? And so I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing as
Yeah.
you are out there.
I mean, I think what we're seeing is the companies that are really considering workplace wellness are seeing that they have such better productivity. They have better, performance from their employees, and they have a way better brand reputation. There was actually, and I'm going to have to find it, but there was a recent study I just read like 2 weeks ago that said the companies that are really taking these things into consideration, their brand reputation is far better, right? And we know a wonderful brand reputation is going to help you, be successful and produce the revenue that you want to see. It's going to the profits you want to see are going to be seen when you have this place and space that creates a place for people to really thrive. And so I think that's what I see the most right now is these companies that are investing in it, they're not seeing as many problems with HR issues, litigation issues. They're not seeing so much problems with, their employees feeling so overwhelmed because they're providing resources. They're recognizing that they're human, and outside of work impacts work, right?
That's right.
And
I love
work
that.
impacts your outside life, so they go hand in hand.
Mm,
Um, and one thing I want to point to, the World Health Organization even showed data that says that depression, anxiety, globally cost the global economy, $1 trillion in lost productivity a year. That's
wow.
$1 trillion in lost productivity because people are going to work, and their anxiety and depression is impacting their ability to truly, be productive and perform. So when
Mm,
you look into those mental health frameworks putting in place, and it's not about being your therapist, but it's about putting things in place that provide support, you're pulling back some of that and holding on to some of that as not a loss, but as a profit.
I love how you have your work and your mission is, I'm hearing, is really that intersection of the social work and the corporate space of
Yes.
putting all that
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
and helping these people that you worked with 25 years ago are now leaders in the workplace,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And so what did they bring with them from their childhood or from however they were raised or whatever, and then how are they making a difference and impact in the workplace right now? um,
Absolutely, and it's so funny you say that. I was thinking the other day that some of the students I used to work with are working adults like myself, and
I know, isn't that crazy?
and so it does, it makes a difference, and it's so very important.
Yes. Well, thank you for the impact that you're leaving on the world,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for all the good work you're doing. I love that quote. Outside of work impacts work. Great quote.
Yeah.
It's true. I think I was with a group yesterday, and they wanted to talk. Well, this is who I am at home, and this is who I'm like. No, you're one person. Whatever's going
Right.
on here is happening here. So, how to help that mindset shift? So, thank you for the work you're doing, and I love the 3 points you shared with us about investing in inclusive leaders, and then proactive solutions, and then having the mental working on mental health in your organization. So, Christian, if people want to reach out to you for consulting, where would they reach? What is the best place for them to find you?
Sure, you can reach directly out to our website, and it really is our name. It's really so it's www.equityboundsolutions.com. Equity, EQUITY, bound, BOUND, solutions, SOLTIONS.com. And we are also on Facebook and Instagram, so you can also reach out to either of those pages just to message us. But the best way is our website. We have a contact us page, and we can communicate quickly and see how we can provide these solutions for you.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for being on Dominate Your Day and for, like I said, making an impact in the world. We appreciate your bringing and now helping children learn to manage themselves too. So good
Yes.
job.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Sure,
I really
sure.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.